President Ramaphosa, in his address to the nation last night, confirming South Africa supports an expansion of the BRICS partnership. So some 23 countries have expressed an interest in joining Brazil, Russia, India, China and of course South Africa in a partnership that's aimed at boosting growth in developing economies. Hopefully the summit means a great deal of foreign direct investment for South Africa, and could more members mean more money and economic growth for us. I'm joined now by Maarten van Doesburgh, Professor of Economics at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Prof, good evening. Thanks so much for coming in. Is it that simple? More members means more opportunity for us, potentially more foreign direct investment, which we desperately need.
Absolutely. So clearly we need foreign direct investment. We're looking to increase. Our growth rates are relatively low in South Africa at the moment. Any form of accelerated growth, any form of accelerated development would be welcomed. By increasing the number, one has to guard against whether these new members, and they are significant economies such as Argentina, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, these are all countries that have actually already applied. And I think one thing we have to guard against is whether the incoming economic activity would dilute or erode the South African domestic economy in any way. So the short answer is yes. Certainly it would bring increased markets, increased access to markets. Interestingly, South Africa is still our main trading partners are USA, UK, Germany and Japan. No,
isn't China number one? Import and exports, China, no, then the US?
Not for South Africa directly.
Okay.
So we do a lot of trade with China,
yeah,
but our majority of trade is still going to the so-called Western countries, if you look at that in total. And so these new markets will certainly bring new opportunity. But I think what we've got to guard against is whether one will then dilute or erode the existing markets that we're already faced with, because or that we're already trading in.
So what specific advantages does South Africa currently get for being part of BRICS?
Well, certainly increased economic activity through foreign direct investment. And what I'm trying to say, and I believe it's very important, is we've got to see how the foreign direct investment translates to job creation, for example, because you could have what's on our everybody's lips at the moment is renewable energy and energy technology transfer. South Africa needs it. We've stated that we need it. We're open to looking at technology transfer. Now, many of these countries would be interested in bringing that technology in. The question is, would that ultimately result in increasing job opportunities in South Africa, or would it simply be that technology coming from the foreign country with the income from that going straight back to that foreign country? And I think those are the key points that we've got to consider, and hopefully these will be discussed, and the South African contingent will make it clear that yes, while we welcome it, we want to ensure that the economic benefit translates into real job opportunities, economic growth, etc.
What's your view on something I was discussing with Prof. William Gumede a little earlier, this de-dollarization, which basically, my understanding is that if we bought something from China, we'd give them our currency and vice versa.
Yeah.
We wouldn't trade through US dollars, which is the norm, I understand.
Yeah. It's a very hot potato, if I can call it that, very hot topic. Clearly, I'd say 80% of all world trade is executed in dollar, and that's significant. That's the entire world's trade. Now, with the de-dollarization, you'd have a shift, and you'd have perhaps easier access for developing countries, emerging countries, to access currency, whereas it's difficult to access dollar. And to answer your question specifically, if we were to trade with our own currencies within the BRICS member states, which is what is being discussed, there will be greater demand then for South African rand. Greater demand for South African rand means a strengthening of the South African rand. The benefits of the strengthening of the South African rand as opposed to the weakening of the South African rand are clear. So there would be a significant strengthening impact in the economy should there be a greater demand for South African rand. So in my opinion, it's certainly something which is being very, very seriously spoken about outside of the
It's very interesting because let's say China buys something from us, or we pay China for something in South African rand.
Yeah.
What then do they do with the rand? Do they then?
They need to buy South African rands, so they need to pay us in rands. So now what they're doing is they buy dollars, and they pay us in dollars, and then we've got to convert the dollars back into rands. So if they're buying and if the denomination is in rands, they need the rands to pay for the goods. They then demand the rands. And simple economics, demand and supply, an increase in demand for a currency is going to result in a strengthening of the currency. So that will have a direct impact on the economy. So that would be good.
I mean, it sounds like a good idea for us. Could there be any negative consequences, bearing in mind that most of our trading partners are Western countries at the moment? Could it upset them?
Yes. And that was exactly where I started with my saying, in principle, fantastic, but we've got to be careful that we don't dilute what we've already got, or erode what we've already got, and also those partnerships and relationships. Economics is not an exact science, and you're sure going to see if increased trade takes place with new countries, that countries that are then losing that trade are going to react in some way. So, but that's not, those are the challenges that we need to deal with, and that's how we need to structure. The BRICS, so at the BRICS Summit, we need to structure these trade agreements, these foreign direct investment agreements, in such a way that they benefit the South African economy significantly. It goes back to my earlier statement. Foreign direct investment in is good, but if the income goes straight back to that host country, then you're not creating the economic growth and the economic stimulus that you need.
Yeah, and I think that, unless it has a real impact on the ground with young people who are unemployed in the main, with dealing with our terrible poverty, ultimately, does that grow our economy in any meaningful way? Well,
you're 100% right, and this is what we've got to stand firm about. And when the technology transfer comes in, educate, train, upskill our own people to be able to.
What's our track record on that?
I think in broad terms, I think it's not that bad. Clearly, we're not, if you look at our levels of skills in the country, we are not a tertiary and significantly advanced tertiary economy in technology, but we are seeing significant, our university, Cape Peninsula University of Technology, other technology universities are focusing on creating opportunities to increase the level of skills in technology, and some significant moves have been made. You may have recently seen the Intel, the microchips that were developed by some of the South African local universities, which are now being exported to Intel. So the technology and the ability is there, the scope, the capacity is there. It's bringing these partners together to create the environment for that technology transfer to take place. So I believe that would be, and you've hit the nail right on the head, saying on the ground, if we create a skills transfer, create employment, create jobs, that's essentially what we're looking at.
How much leverage does South Africa have within BRICS?
We're the smallest economy within, obviously, Brazil, Russia, China, and India. So in terms of size, we're small. In terms of volume, we're small. In terms of population, we're small. However, we are well positioned. Our location is fantastic. I must tell you, of the 23 countries we've spoken about, there are another almost 40 countries queuing up to. So the 23 are the countries that have actually applied. They've already applied to join BRICS.
Why do they want to join BRICS? What's in it for them?
Expansion of markets, access to technology, direct investment, and trade outside of the dollar. So this dollar issue is a very important issue. So the African countries specifically would look to want, and have already started discussing, potentially a unified African currency to create, improved trade. And it's more about accessibility. The dollar is expensive. It's the strongest currency in the world. So it's difficult and it's expensive to get hold of dollars. And if you want dollars, you've got to pay for them. And if so what we're looking at is restrictions being lowered, accessibility being improved, and potentially new currencies within these trading blocks to facilitate the trade, which ultimately will result, in our case, with strengthening of the rand.
Let's hope some real progress is made at this summit. Thank you so much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
Maarten van Doesburgh, Professor of Economics at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Well,